In a crowded university dining hall in Scotland, a young prince sat nervously with his tray of food, trying to blend in with hundreds of other students. He had spent years dreaming of a normal life, away from the cameras and the protocol that had defined his childhood. Just a few tables away, a brunette girl with sparkling eyes laughed with her friends, completely unaware that the shy boy stealing glances at her would one day make her a princess. This wasn't a fairy tale written in ancient castles or arranged by royal advisors. This was 2001, and love was about to bloom in the most unexpected place, a university dormitory where future kings did their own laundry and future queens stood in line for cafeteria food. What started as a friendship over shared textbooks and late-night study sessions would grow into a romance that would captivate the world and modernize the British monarchy forever. But their path to the altar wouldn't be smooth. There would be breakups that made headlines, paparazzi chases through London streets, and moments when Catherine wondered if loving a prince was worth losing her privacy forever. This is the true story of how two ordinary university students became the most watched couple in the world, and how their love survived the extraordinary pressure of being royal in the modern age. The ancient stones of St. Andrew's University had witnessed many love stories over its 600 years, but none quite like this one. It was September 2001, and Prince William, Arthur Philip, Louis Windsor, was trying very hard to be just another freshman. He had chosen St. Pet, Andrews partly because it was far from London, tucked away on the windswept coast of Scotland, where he hoped to find some peace from the relentless attention that had followed him since birth. At 19, William was tall and lanky, with his father's ears and his mother's eyes. He had spent his gap year in Chile and Africa, trying to understand the world beyond palace walls. Now, as he unpacked his belongings in his dormitory room, he felt the weight of expectation settling on his shoulders like a heavy coat. Every other student on campus knew exactly who he was, and most were either too intimidated to speak to him or too eager to befriend the future king. Catherine Elizabeth Middleton had no such concerns about royal protocol. The daughter of party supply entrepreneurs from Berkshire, she had earned her place at St. Andrews through hard work and good grades, not birthright. At 19, she was confident without being arrogant, beautiful without seeming to know it, and possessed of a laugh that could light up any room she entered. Her friends called her Kate, and she was studying art history with the focused determination of someone who had worked for everything she had ever achieved. Their first encounter was utterly ordinary, which was perhaps what made it so extraordinary. William was standing in line at the university dining hall, holding his tray and trying to decide between the fish and chips or the questionable-looking curry when he heard that laugh. He turned around and saw Catherine talking animatedly with her roommate about their upcoming art history lecture. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her long hair falling naturally around her shoulders. And she looked so refreshingly normal that William found himself staring. Catherine noticed the tall boy looking at her and smiled politely. She recognized him, of course. Everyone did, but she didn't seem particularly impressed or flustered. She simply nodded and turned back to her conversation. This small act of treating him like a regular person rather than a celebrity made a deeper impression on William than she could have imagined. Their paths began crossing more frequently in the following weeks. They shared a course in art history, where William struggled to keep up while Catherine took detailed notes and asked insightful questions. Professor Bender Grosvenor would later recall how the prince seemed more interested in watching his classmate than in learning about Renaissance paintings. Catherine, meanwhile, found herself curious about the quiet young man who seemed so different from the confident public figure she had seen on television. The breakthrough came during a study group session in the university library. Several students had gathered to prepare for an upcoming exam on medieval art, and Catherine noticed that William looked lost and frustrated as he flipped through his textbook. Without making a big show of it, she quietly slid her notes across the table to him. Her handwriting was neat and organized, with little diagrams and helpful annotations that made complex concepts seem simple. "Thank you," William whispered, genuinely grateful. "I'm completely lost." "The trick is to connect the art to the historical events," Catherine whispered back. "See, this painting wasn't just decoration, it was political propaganda." The artist was trying to send a message about power and religion. As she explained the connections between art and politics, William found himself fascinated not just by her knowledge, but by the passionate way she spoke about subjects that interested her. She had a gift for making abstract concepts concrete, for finding the human stories within historical facts. More importantly, she talked to him like he was just another struggling student, not the heir to the throne. Their friendship developed gradually over the autumn months. They began studying together regularly, sometimes joined by other students. sometimes just the two of them in the library or in one of the common rooms. William discovered that Catherine was not only intelligent but also kind, funny, and refreshingly down-to-earth. She teased him gently when he complained about minor inconveniences, reminding him that most people their age were dealing with student loans and part-time jobs, not just the pressure of royal duties. Catherine, for her part, began to see past the royal title to the real person underneath. William was funny in a dry, self-deprecating way, and he had a genuine curiosity about people and the world around him. He was also lonely in a way that success and privilege couldn't fix. The weight of his future responsibilities was always present, and Catherine began to understand how isolating it must be to have your entire life planned out before you were old enough to choose it yourself. The first hint that their relationship was becoming something more than friendship came during the Christmas holidays. William was required to spend Christmas at Sandringham with his family, following centuries-old traditions and protocols. Catherine went home to her parents' house in Bucklebury, where the biggest decision was whether to have turkey or ham for Christmas dinner. But throughout the holiday break, they found themselves texting each other constantly, sharing little observations about their very different worlds. William told her about the formal Christmas morning service at the local church, where every gesture was choreographed and every word scrutinized by the press. Catherine told him about her family's chaotic Christmas morning, with wrapping paper everywhere and her younger siblings arguing over board games. These exchanges gave them glimpses into each other's lives that went far beyond what they could share with other friends. When they returned to university in January 2002, something had shifted between them. Their study sessions became longer and more intimate, filled with comfortable silences and meaningful glances. Other students began to notice the way William's face lit up when Catherine entered a room, and how she seemed to be the only person who could make him truly relax and laugh. The moment that changed everything happened on a cold February evening in Catherine's dormitory room. She had invited William and a few other friends to watch a movie, but one by one, the others had found excuses to leave early. Whether this was planned by their matchmaking friends or simply a coincidence, William and Catherine found themselves alone together for the first time. They were sitting on her narrow dormitory bed, sharing a bag of popcorn and watching 4 weddings and a funeral, when Catherine made a comment about Hugh Grant's character that made William laugh so hard he spilled popcorn all over the floor. As they both reached down to clean up the mess, their hands touched, and suddenly the air in the small room felt charged with electricity. When they straightened up, they were sitting much closer than before. William found himself looking into Catherine's dark eyes, seeing warmth and intelligence and something else that made his heart race. Catherine felt her breath catch as she realized that the boy she had been thinking about more and more was looking at her, like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The kiss that followed was gentle and hesitant, nothing like the passionate embraces in romantic movies. It was the kiss of 2 young people who cared deeply for each other, but understood that whatever was happening between them was complicated in ways that most relationships never had to be. When they broke apart, they both knew that their friendship had crossed into territory that would change everything. "This is complicated," William said quietly, his forehead resting against hers. "I know," Catherine replied, her voice equally soft. "But maybe complicated doesn't have to mean impossible." That night, as William walked back to his own dormitory through the quiet streets of St. Andrews, he felt something he had never experienced before. For the first time in his life, he was in love with someone who loved him back not because of his title or his future crown, but because of who he was when all the royal trappings were stripped away. It was terrifying and exhilarating and wonderful all at once. Catherine lay awake in her narrow dormitory bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to process what had just happened. She had kissed a prince. More importantly, she had kissed William, the boy who made her laugh during boring lectures and who always remembered to save her a seat in the dining hall. The boy who was kind to the cleaning staff and who got genuinely excited about art history despite struggling with the coursework. But as the euphoria of that first kiss began to fade, reality started to creep in. Catherine was smart enough to understand what dating Prince William would mean. It would mean scrutiny from the press, criticism from people who thought she wasn't good enough, and a life where every decision would be analyzed and judged by millions of people. It would mean giving up any hope of a normal private life. Andrews, both William and Catherine were asking themselves the same question: was love enough to overcome the obstacles that lay ahead? They were about to find out that the answer was far more complicated than either of them had imagined. The news of their budding romance didn't stay secret for long. Within weeks, other students had noticed the change in their relationship, and whispers began circulating around campus. William and Catherine tried to maintain the pretense that they were just friends, but their body language told a different story. They sat closer together in lectures, their conversations were more intimate, and Catherine had begun wearing a silver bracelet that no one had seen before, but that looked suspiciously like something that might have come from a very expensive jewelry shop. The first real test of their relationship came in March, when Catherine participated in a charity fashion show for the university. She had volunteered to model several outfits, including a daring black lace dress that transformed her from a pretty university student into a stunning young woman who could command the attention of every person in the room. William was in the audience that night, officially there to support the charity but really there to support Catherine. When she walked onto the runway in that black dress, he felt his breath catch in his throat. This wasn't the girl in jeans and sneakers who helped him with his art history homework. This was a confident, beautiful woman who could hold her own in any situation, including the world he came from. After the show, William found Catherine backstage, surrounded by friends congratulating her on her performance. But when she saw him approaching, her face lit up with a smile that was meant just for him. "What did you think?" she asked, suddenly nervous about his opinion in a way that surprised them both. "I think," William said quietly, leaning close so only she could hear, "that I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, more significant than any royal proclamation. Catherine felt her heart skip a beat as she realized that what had started as friendship and attraction had grown into something much deeper and more meaningful. "I think," she whispered back, "that I might be falling in love with you too." It was a moment of truth that would set the stage for everything that followed. Two young people standing backstage at a university fashion show, acknowledging that they had found something rare and precious together. They had no way of knowing that their love story would captivate the world, or that the journey ahead would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. All they knew was that they had found each other, and for now, that was enough. The spring of 2002 brought both joy and challenges to William and Catherine's blossoming relationship. As their love deepened, so did the complexity of keeping it secret from a world that seemed determined to dissect every aspect of the young prince's life. What had begun as stolen kisses in empty classrooms and hand-holding during long walks along the Scottish coast was becoming increasingly difficult to hide. Their first real relationship milestone came when William invited Catherine to spend a weekend at his private residence near the university. It was a small cottage that had been rented for him by the royal household, designed to give him some semblance of normal student life while providing the security that his position demanded. For Catherine, crossing the threshold of that cottage felt like stepping into William's real world for the first time. The weekend was a revelation for both of them. Away from the curious eyes of other students and the constant awareness of being watched, they could simply be themselves. William cooked dinner for Catherine, burning the pasta slightly and laughing as he tried to scrape the stuck bits from the bottom of the pot. Catherine helped him with his coursework, patiently explaining concepts he had missed while they curled up together on the small sofa in front of the fireplace. It was during this weekend that they had their first serious conversation about the future. They both knew that their relationship couldn't remain a secret forever, and they needed to discuss what that might mean for Catherine's life. "You understand what this could become, don't you?" William asked as they walked hand in hand along the beach, the waves crashing beside them in the gathering dusk. "If we continue down this path, everything changes for you. The press attention, the scrutiny, the loss of privacy. It's not fair to ask someone to give up their normal life for this." Catherine was quiet for a long moment, watching the seabirds wheeling overhead. She had been thinking about this very question for weeks, weighing her growing feelings for William against the enormity of what being with him would mean. "I've been thinking about that a lot," she said finally. "And I keep coming back to the same question. What is a normal life, really? Is it normal to find someone who understands you completely, who makes you laugh every day, who challenges you to be better than you thought you could be? Because if that's normal, then what we have is the most normal thing in the world." William stopped walking and turned to face her. In the fading light, Catherine's face was serious but determined, and he felt a surge of love so strong it almost overwhelmed him. "It won't be easy," he warned. "There will be times when you'll hate the attention, when you'll wonder if it's worth it. There will be people who criticize everything about you, from your clothes to your background to your right to be with me, and I'll be powerless to protect you from a lot of it." Catherine reached up and touched his face gently. "I know you can't protect me from everything, but I also know that what we have is worth fighting for. We'll figure it out together." That conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. They were no longer just two university students who happened to be dating. They were a couple preparing to face the world together, whatever that might bring. The first test came sooner than expected. In April 2002, a tabloid newspaper published grainy photographs of William and Catherine walking together near the university, their body language clearly indicating that they were more than friends. The headline screamed, "William's new girlfriend," in bold letters, and suddenly, Catherine found herself thrust into a spotlight she wasn't prepared for. The morning the story broke, Catherine's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. and didn't stop. Reporters had somehow obtained her mobile number, and they were calling constantly, demanding interviews and comments about her relationship with the prince. When she tried to leave her dormitory to attend classes, she found photographers waiting outside, their cameras clicking rapidly as she hurried past with her head down. William was furious when he heard what was happening. He immediately contacted his private secretary and demanded that palace security do something to protect Catherine from the harassment, but the response he received was not what he had hoped for. "Sir," his private secretary explained during a tense phone call, "Miss Middleton is not officially connected to the royal family. We cannot provide her with protection or intervene with the press on her behalf. Our hands are tied until or unless the relationship becomes officially sanctioned." It was William's first real confrontation with the limitations of his position. He had the power that came with being second in line to the throne, but he couldn't use it to protect the woman he loved unless she became officially part of the royal system. It was a catch-22 that left him feeling helpless and angry. Catherine, meanwhile, was discovering just how dramatically her life could change overnight. Walking across campus became an ordeal, with photographers following her from class to class. Her parents' home in Berkshire was besieged by reporters, forcing her family to keep their curtains drawn and screen all their phone calls. Her younger siblings, James and Pippa, found themselves being photographed on their way to school simply because they were related to Prince William's girlfriend. The pressure took its toll on both of them. Catherine began losing weight from stress and lack of appetite. She found it difficult to concentrate in classes, knowing that every move she made was being watched and potentially photographed. Sleep became elusive as she lay awake worrying about what new story or photograph might appear in the papers the next day. William, too, was struggling. He felt guilty for bringing this chaos into Catherine's life, and frustrated by his inability to make it stop. He began having doubts about whether it was fair to ask her to endure this level of scrutiny for the possibility of a future together. The carefree days of their early relationship seemed like a distant memory. Their first major crisis came in June 2002, just before the end of the university term. Catherine had been photographed coming out of a London nightclub with friends, looking tired and slightly disheveled after what appeared to be a night of heavy drinking. The photographs were unflattering, and the accompanying story painted her as a party girl who was inappropriate for a future king. The story was largely fabricated. Catherine had been designated driver for her friends and had been drinking soft drinks all evening, but the damage to her reputation was immediate and severe. Public opinion, which had initially been sympathetic toward the young woman thrust into an impossible situation, began to turn against her. William found Catherine in tears in her dormitory room after the story broke. She was sitting on her bed, surrounded by newspapers and magazines, all featuring variations of the same unflattering photographs. "Maybe they're right," she said through her tears. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe you'd be better off with someone who was born into this world, someone who knows how to handle all of this." William sat down beside her and took her hands in his. "Don't let them do this to you. Don't let them make you believe that you're not good enough because you're better than good enough. You're everything I never knew I was looking for." "But look at what's happening to my family," Catherine protested. "My parents can't even leave their house without being harassed. Pippa can't go out with her friends without being followed. Is our relationship really worth putting them through this?" It was a question that William couldn't answer easily. He loved Catherine deeply, but he was beginning to understand the full cost of that love, not just to her, but to everyone around her. The royal family had long operated on the principle that duty came before personal happiness, and William was facing his first real test of that principle. The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult of their relationship. They talked through the night about the realities of their situation, the pressures they were both facing, and the uncertain future that lay ahead of them. By dawn, they had reached a painful decision. They would take a break from their relationship. It wasn't a breakup, they told themselves. It was a strategic pause, a chance for Catherine to retreat from the spotlight, and for both of them to gain some perspective on whether their love was strong enough to overcome the obstacles they faced. William would finish his degree at St. Andrews, and Catherine would do the same. But they would do it as friends rather than as a couple. The announcement of their break was made through palace sources rather than officially, but the message was clear enough for the press to understand. The intense scrutiny of Catherine diminished almost immediately as photographers and reporters moved on to other stories. The relief was palpable, but so was the sense of loss. The summer of 2002 was one of the loneliest periods in both their lives. William threw himself into his royal duties, undertaking his first official engagements and beginning to understand the weight of the responsibilities that awaited him. He traveled to Africa for conservation work and to various Commonwealth countries for ceremonial functions, always accompanied by his security detail and private secretary, but feeling more isolated than ever. Catherine returned to her family home and tried to rebuild some semblance of a normal life. She took a part-time job at her parents' party supply business, helping with wedding preparations and children's birthday parties. It was grounding work that reminded her of who she had been before she became known as Prince William's girlfriend, but it also felt hollow somehow, as if she was playing a role in someone else's life. They maintained minimal contact during this period, exchanging occasional text messages, but being careful not to rekindle the intense connection that had gotten them into trouble in the first place. Both were dating other people casually, more out of a desire to appear to be moving on than from any real interest in finding new relationships. But absence, as the saying goes, makes the heart grow fonder. The more time William spent in the rigid formal world of royal duty, the more he missed Catherine's warmth and authenticity. The more Catherine tried to return to her old life, the more she realized how much she had grown and changed during her time with William. The person she had become through loving him couldn't be erased by pretending the relationship had never happened. The turning point came in September 2002, when they both returned to St. Catherine, Andrews for their second year. They had agreed to maintain their friendship but keep their distance romantically. But the moment William saw Catherine walking across the quad with her books in her arms, he knew that his feelings hadn't diminished at all. Catherine, too, felt the familiar flutter of attraction when she spotted William in their first art history lecture of the new term. He looked older somehow, more serious, but when their eyes met across the lecture hall, his face broke into the same warm smile that had first made her heart skip a beat. After class, they found themselves walking in the same direction, making awkward small talk about their summers and their courses for the new year. The easy intimacy they had once shared was gone, replaced by a polite formality that felt wrong to both of them. "This is ridiculous," William said suddenly, stopping in the middle of the path. "We're acting like strangers, and we're not strangers. We're friends, at the very least, and we care about each other too much to pretend otherwise." Catherine smiled for the first time since seeing him again. "You're right, this is ridiculous. Can we try being friends again? Real friends, I mean, not whatever this awkward politeness is supposed to be." The reconciliation of their friendship happened gradually over the following weeks. They began studying together again, carefully maintaining appropriate boundaries but allowing themselves to enjoy each other's company. They discovered that the connection between them was still there, perhaps even stronger for having been tested. But they also discovered that other people had noticed the change in their relationship during their time apart. Both had grown more confident and mature during their separation, and their friends and classmates could see that whatever had been between them before was still very much alive. The question that hung in the air, unspoken but always present, was whether they would have the courage to try again. Both knew that the problems that had driven them apart hadn't disappeared. The press attention, the public scrutiny, the pressure on Catherine's family, all of that would return if they became a couple again. But they also knew something else. They had survived their separation, and what they felt for each other had not only endured but had grown stronger. They had tested their love by walking away from it, and it had passed the test. Now they had to decide whether they were brave enough to fight for it. The decision to give their relationship another chance came not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through a series of small moments that reminded William and Catherine why they had fallen in love in the first place. It was October 2002, and the Scottish autumn was painting St. Andrews in brilliant shades of gold and red. Catherine was struggling with a particularly difficult essay on Byzantine art when William found her in the library, surrounded by books and looking frustrated. Without saying a word, he sat down across from her and began helping her organize her research. They worked together for hours, falling back into their old rhythm of collaboration and quiet companionship. As the library began to empty and the evening grew later, they found themselves alone among the towering shelves of academic texts. Catherine looked up from her notes to find William watching her with an expression she remembered from their early days together, a mixture of affection, admiration, and something deeper that made her pulse quicken. "I've missed this," he said quietly. "I've missed you." "I've missed you too," Catherine admitted. "More than I thought I would, more than I probably should have." The conversation that followed was different from the intense discussions they'd had before their break. This time, they talked not just about the challenges they would face, but about the strategies they could use to overcome them. They had both learned valuable lessons during their time apart, about handling pressure, maintaining privacy, and staying true to themselves despite external expectations. William had spent his summer observing how other members of the royal family managed their personal relationships while fulfilling their public duties. He had also had numerous conversations with his father about the importance of choosing a life partner who could handle the unique pressures of royal life while remaining authentic and grounded. Catherine, meanwhile, had used her time away from the relationship to strengthen her own identity and support systems. She had deepened her friendships, grown closer to her family, and developed a clearer sense of who she was independent of her connection to William. This newfound confidence would prove crucial in the years to come. "If we do this again," William said, "we need to be smarter about it. We need better boundaries with the press, clearer expectations about privacy, and stronger support systems for both of us." Catherine nodded. "And we need to remember that we're not just boyfriend and girlfriend anymore. If this works out the way we hope it might, we're potentially looking at a lifetime partnership that will affect not just us, but everyone around us." It was a mature conversation that reflected how much both of them had grown during their brief separation. They were no longer just two university students falling in love. They were two young adults making a conscious choice to build something together despite extraordinary obstacles. Their reunion was kept quiet for several months, known only to their closest friends and family members. They had learned the importance of protecting their relationship from external pressures, at least in its early stages. This time, instead of the public displays of affection that had attracted media attention before, they focused on building a private foundation of trust and understanding. The Christmas holidays of 2002 marked another significant milestone. For the first time, William invited Catherine to meet his father officially. The meeting took place at Highgrove, Prince Charles's private residence, in a carefully orchestrated introduction that would set the tone for Catherine's relationship with the royal family. Prince Charles had been briefed extensively about Catherine and her family. He knew about her middle-class background, her parents' business success, and her academic achievements. But what impressed him most during their meeting was her composure and genuine interest in the causes he cared about. Catherine asked thoughtful questions about his environmental initiatives and listened attentively to his views on organic farming and architectural preservation. "She's got substance," Prince Charles told William privately after the visit. "She's not just pretty or charming, though she's certainly both of those things. She's intelligent and curious, and she seems to understand the responsibilities that come with this life." The approval of William's father was crucial, but perhaps even more important was how Catherine handled the formal protocol of the visit without losing her natural warmth and personality. She curtsied at the appropriate moments, used the correct titles, and followed royal etiquette. But she also laughed at Prince Charles's jokes, shared stories about her own family, and managed to be both respectful and authentic. Meanwhile, Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, were facing their own challenges as their daughter's relationship with the prince became more serious. The media attention on their family business intensified, with reporters digging into their background and questioning whether they were suitable in-laws for a future king. The Middletons handled the pressure with remarkable grace and dignity. They refused to give interviews about their daughter's relationship, maintained their privacy despite constant media interest, and continued to provide Catherine with the stable, loving family foundation that had shaped her character. Their discreet support would prove essential to Catherine's ability to navigate the complexities of royal life. The spring of 2003 brought new challenges as William and Catherine entered their final year at St. Andrews. The pressure of completing their degrees while managing an increasingly serious relationship was considerable, but they had developed effective strategies for balancing their personal and academic lives. They also began having more serious conversations about their future beyond university. William was expected to begin his military service after graduation, following a tradition established by previous generations of the royal family. This would mean periods of separation and the additional challenges of maintaining a relationship while William fulfilled his duties as an officer. Catherine, meanwhile, was considering her career options. She had excelled in her art history studies and was considering various paths, from working in art galleries to pursuing further education. But she was also increasingly aware that her choices would be influenced by her relationship with William and the possibility that she might one day have royal duties of her own.
The most significant moment of this period came in May 2003, during their final exams at St. Andrews.
William had been struggling with the pressure of his studies combined with the weight of his future responsibilities, and Catherine noticed that he was becoming increasingly stressed and withdrawn. One evening, she found him in his room, staring blankly at his revision notes with a look of complete overwhelm. When she asked what was wrong, William finally voiced the fears that had been haunting him for months. "What if I'm not good enough?" he said. "What if I can't live up to what's expected of me? My grandmother has been an extraordinary queen for over 50 years. My father has dedicated his life to causes he believes in. What if I don't have what it takes to follow in their footsteps?" Catherine sat down beside him and took his hands in hers. "You know what I see when I look at you," she said. "I see someone who cares deeply about people, who thinks about the impact of his actions, who wants to make a positive difference in the world. Those aren't just nice qualities. They're the qualities of a good leader." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "And you know what else? You don't have to be your grandmother or your father. You have to be the best version of yourself. The world doesn't need another Elizabeth II or another Charles III. It needs the first William V." This conversation marked a turning point in William's understanding of his future role and his relationship with Catherine. He realized that she didn't just love him despite his royal duties. She understood and supported his sense of purpose and responsibility. She saw his future not as a burden, but as an opportunity to serve others and make a meaningful impact. Their university graduation in June 2003 was a bittersweet moment. They had achieved their academic goals, but they were also leaving behind the protective bubble of university life, where they had fallen in love and learned to navigate the challenges of their relationship. The ceremony itself was a media circus, with hundreds of photographers and reporters covering William's graduation. Catherine attended as one of many graduating students, but the cameras captured every moment of her interaction with William and his family. The photographs from that day would later be seen as the first official documentation of Catherine as a serious part of William's life. After graduation, they faced their first major separation, as William began his military training at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. The physical distance was challenging, but it also provided them with an opportunity to test the strength of their relationship under new circumstances. William threw himself into his military training with characteristic determination, earning the respect of his fellow cadets through his work ethic and leadership abilities rather than his royal status. The structure and discipline of military life suited him, and he found purpose in preparing for a role where he could serve his country in a more direct way than traditional royal duties allowed. Catherine, meanwhile, began working in London, taking positions that would allow her to gain professional experience while remaining flexible enough to accommodate the unpredictable demands of her relationship with William. She worked briefly in fashion retail and then moved to her family's party planning business, gaining valuable experience in event management and client relations. Their relationship during this period was conducted largely through phone calls, text messages, and occasional visits when William's training schedule permitted. The separation was difficult, but it also demonstrated their commitment to each other and their ability to maintain their connection despite physical distance and demanding schedules. The period from 2004 to 2006 would test their relationship in new ways, as William's military career progressed and Catherine established herself professionally. They faced continued media scrutiny, public speculation about their future, and the ongoing challenge of building a life together while fulfilling their individual responsibilities. But the foundation they had built at St. Andrews, based on genuine friendship, mutual respect, shared values, and deep love, proved strong enough to weather these challenges. They had learned to communicate effectively, support each other through difficulties, and maintain their individual identities, while building a partnership that could withstand the extraordinary pressures of royal life. By late 2006, it was clear to those closest to them that William and Catherine were building towards something permanent. They had survived the initial media frenzy, the pressure of university, the challenges of long-distance relationship, and the scrutiny of both their families. They had proven to themselves and to others that their love was not just a university romance, but a mature partnership capable of lasting a lifetime. The engagement that would come in 2010 would surprise no one who had watched their relationship develop over nearly a decade. They had done the hard work of building a foundation of trust, understanding, and mutual support that would serve them well as they took on the responsibilities of representing the modern British monarchy. Love all, their love story had begun with a shy prince and a confident young woman meeting in a university dining hall, but it had grown into something much more significant, a partnership that would help define the future of the royal family and demonstrate that even in the 21st century, genuine love could overcome extraordinary obstacles. As 2007 dawned, William and Catherine faced their future together with confidence, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, They would face them as partners who had already proven that their love could survive anything the world might throw at them. Their fairy tale was just beginning, but it was grounded in the very real work of two people who had chosen each other not just once, but over and over again, through every trial and triumph that had brought them to this point. The making of their modern royal love story was complete, but their real adventure as a couple destined to serve their country and change the monarchy was just about to begin.